Hello, welcome back to Malicious Compliance Stories. We have another 3 stories for you today. Oh, my paper isn't long enough? K. Death by Mountain Dew. And tiny print contract. But before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to our channel if you're new here and turn on notifications so you don't miss a new video every single day. Alright, let's get started. Our first story. Oh, my paper isn't long enough? K. Another post reminded me of my own little bit of malicious compliance back in college. This was more than a decade ago. So, in my junior year, I was taking an art history class on medieval art and architecture. Partway through the course, the professor assigned a paper, and the instructions were that the paper length was to be 5 to 9 pages. I wrote my paper, and it ended up being 5 pages. I said everything I felt was necessary to say in that number of pages. When I got the paper back, I received an A-. Now, I'm not usually the type to complain about an A-, but in this case, I knew I wrote a strong paper. I was an art history major and at this point was 3 years into my program, so I had a buttload of art history classes under my belt and I fucking knew when I produced a good art history paper. So, I really wanted to hear why I got the minus instead of a straight A. I went to the professor's office hours to ask why he graded it as such. Yes, he was quite amused that someone was complaining about an A-. I didn't give a fuck. I wanted to know why he took off points and what he thought could have been improved. He hemmed and hawed for a few minutes, because there wasn't anything wrong with my paper, and finally he said, well, it could have been longer. I said, the prompt said 5 to 9 pages and I was within that range. He replied, it could have been longer. Okay, fine. The next paper that came around was the term research paper, and this time the prompt said, at least 15 pages. QMC. I worked my ass off writing this research paper. And out of pure spite, I made this dude read no less than 29 fucking pages about some stupid medieval church. I'd written papers this long before, and my honors thesis was nearly 4 times that length a year later, but for this topic, I was really pushing it. The verbosity was a bit ridiculous. A week or 2 later, he returned the paper. A+ grade. He handed it to me and said, with a genuine smile, it was great. I loved it. You should submit it for publication to XYZ History Journal. I begrudgingly submitted my maliciously compliant paper to the journal, and it was accepted and published. Admittedly, I was probably the one that suffered the most from my own MC, but I didn't care, and I'd do it again. Our next story. Death by Mountain Dew. This is a funny story about kids and soda pop. So, a few years ago, when my 5 kids were still at home, my brother got himself in trouble and his 4 kids had to come live with us. We started having a lot of issues with all of the kids just helping themselves to whatever treats we would buy. So, if we went shopping and got some soda to last a couple weeks, they might drink it all when we weren't home and then blame each other for it. So, one day we were at the big warehouse store, and they had a pallet of Mountain Dew on clearance for 39 cents per bottle. My wife and I looked at each other and devised a devilish plan. We bought the entire pallet. Yes, it barely fit in our Mazda CX-9. The store workers laughed at us. We got home and had the kids come unload the vehicle. We explained that they could now drink as much soda as they wanted, but we only had the one flavor and they had to drink all of it before we would buy any more soda. Of course, they initially thought they had scored big time. A month later, and they were done. Daily complaints, begging for forgiveness, swearing they would never drink Mountain Dew again. After that, it was a good couple of years before we had to start rationing their soda allowance again. And our last story. Tiny print contract. Years ago, I was at university. For my course we had to sign a learning contract every year. One year they said that due to cuts we had to print them ourselves. So, here's the MC. I printed the 8-page contract on one side of an A4. When they objected, I pointed out that times are hard for everyone and that if you looked closely, you could read it all. I put it on the admin counter and walked off. Well, that's all for this video. Thank you for tuning in, and I'll see you ill.